Hello, welcome back to another video on making characters from Dungeon Meshi in Pathfinder 2nd Edition Remaster. We've covered most of the main cast now. Today we're going to look at making Senshi the Dwarf, a character who we meet in the first episode, though not part of the original party, and whose backstory remains a mystery for a lot of the first season. He's a great character, he's very entertaining, and he's great with food, even if it is a peculiar sort of food. He's another fighter, so we're going to have some similarities to Laios, which is going to be interesting to look at. But yeah, he's a dwarf, and here he is. It's going to be another short video this week, but I have got a big one in the works, which I was hoping to get a bit sooner. It's been a bit delayed, so I've got this out first. So I hope you enjoyed this. Subscribe if you want to see more, and look out for a similar but also different episode in the next couple of weeks. But for now, let's have a look at Senshi from Dungeon Meshi. So Senshi, we have an easy start. He's a dwarf, and we have an ancestry for dwarves. Who would have thought this? Dwarves are short, stocky people who are often stubborn, fierce, and devoted. Pretty much sounds like Senshi. Hit points starting with 10, pretty decent number, and he's quite hardy, so that makes sense. Size is medium, but speed is 20 feet. They are a little bit slower. Senshi's not known for speed, so that certainly tracks. They have a boost to Constitution and to Wisdom. Again, makes a lot of sense, along with a free boost and a floor to Charisma. Now, Senshi definitely has some charisma. He is very good at persuading people not to eat him and bartering, so we're definitely going to have to level that out a little bit, but it's a general sense, you can see where they're coming from. They also get Dark Vision, which is a classic dwarf trait for being underground a lot of the time, and the Clan Dagger, which is essentially a fancy dagger. And while Senshi doesn't have this specifically, he does have his Mithril kitchen knife, so we're going to kind of repurpose this as being that. For his heritage, we went with Forge Dwarf, not because he's innately a dwarf of the Forge, but because it says you have remarkable adaptation for hot environments from ancestors who inhabited blazing deserts or volcanic chambers beneath the earth, and this grants you fire resistance equal to half your level with a minimum of 1, so 1 for now. And we know that within the show, Senshi and Namari, and just dwarves in general, do have this fire resistance almost. They're very good at holding very hot things and that kind of stuff. So it seemed to make sense, but I'm sure some of the other options would also work. Let me know if you do something different down below. Beyond that, his background, we've gone with Cook. Again, the innate actual description of what a cook should be in this instance is a bit different to what Senshi is. This says you grew up in the kitchens of a tavern or the dining establishment and excelled there, becoming an exceptional cook. Whereas for him it's you in a dungeon and that's what you had to do because you had years to do it. Without us getting into too many spoilers. So you gain 2 attribute boost from this and 1 speed of Constitution or Intelligence, will likely be Constitution, and a free boost, and then you're trained in Survival, which makes sense, and Cooking Lore, which makes sense as well, and you gain the Seasoned Skill feat, which we'll look at in a second. So we've got all of that. Our class is of course going to be Fighter. That makes a lot more sense than anything else. But we're going to go in a different direction to the one we did with Laios. For his abilities, we've given him a boost to Strength along with his Constitution and Wisdom, and he has that penalty to Charisma. We've gone for a background boost of Constitution and Charisma to kind of level that out. His Con or Intelligence, and he knows his stuff, but I don't think it comes across as intelligence a lot of the time. He doesn't know lots about the surface and those peoples and stuff like that. Class boost being Strength or Dex, we've got to go Strength, and then we've given him another boost to Strength and Con to give him +3 and +3, a +1 in Wisdom, added to Intelligence to keep that on +1, and +1 to his Charisma to give him a little bit of that Diplomacy element, and nothing to his Dex because he's not particularly dexterous, I suppose, apart from his knife skills. For his skill training, we've given him Athletics. He also gets Acrobatics from being a fighter, Crafting, Diplomacy, Nature, and he has Survival. Nature because he knows things about plants as well. We'd already talked about his diplomatic leanings, and Crafting because you see he makes his own slime trap for drying those and can do little bits and pieces like that. For his Ancestry feat, we went with Dwarven Dotiness, I'm quite not sure how to pronounce that. And again, there's a few here that would work. The dwarves get quite a lot, some of them uncommon, but still. This one is, you are naturally calm and collected in the face of imminent danger. At the end of your turn, you reduce your frightened condition by 2 instead of 1. Frightened in Pathfinder 2nd Edition is a penalty that is taken from certain rolls you do, and it ticks down at the end of each round unless other effects are in play. And this just makes you better at that. And essentially, we rarely see Frightened. It's partly why he is so blasé about traps and things like that. He's concerned sometimes, or worried about others, but he doesn't ever seem particularly frightened, except for one notable example, which is why it's so notable. Again, that's towards the end of the show, so spoilers for that, but I think this works. But likewise, there's, I think, others that would work here as well. You could certainly make an argument for Fire Savvy, perhaps, Forged Day's Rest, Mountain Strategy, Unburdened Iron to some extent, but I like this one. He has the Reactive Strike feat, as we've talked about before, from being a fighter, along with the Shield Block feat, as well as the free feat Seasoned, which is because he's trained in cooking lore, and he has the Cook background, which is you master the preparations of many types of food and drink, and you get a +1 bonus, circumstance bonus, to checks to craft food and drink, including elixirs if you have a chemical crafter, which he doesn't, but you know. And it increases to +2 if you are a master. So, just a fun little thing for some out-of-combat stuff right there. Finally for him, we have chosen the class feat of Vicious Swing, which gives him a 2-action flourish maneuver. You unleash a particularly powerful attack that clobbers your foes, but leaves you a bit unsteady. And quite often we see Senshi going for these big swings in the show and in the manga, and then kind of tumbling around a bit. You make a melee strike, and it counts as 2 attacks when you calculate multiple attack penalty. Which means that if you were making another attack after this one, you'd be at the -10, not the -5. It doesn't apply beforehand, from what I understand, which is what I was doing for a while, which was very dangerous for our Magus character, because they were hitting very rarely, so that did feel a bit bad. And if you hit, you did an extra die of weapon damage. Then if you reach 10th level, you increase that to 2 extra dice. And then at 18th level, 3. Which is pretty fun, just an extra bit of damage from a heavy hit. So that's Senshi. We've given him a Great Axe because he does largely two-hand his, and it's got the double-ended, which is kind of a classic Great Axe look, which is the Sweep trait. Sweep means that when you attack this weapon, you get a +1 bonus to your attack roll if you already attempted to attack a different target. Essentially, kind of gives it the Agile trait if you've got multiple enemies, but not quite. As well as his Clan Dagger, which we've changed to be made out of high-grade Dawn Silver, because he does say it is Mithril. Mithril is not an option in Pathfinder now, I imagine because of copyright or something, or the very least it's not on Path Builder. But Dawn Silver seems like a similar kind of idea, I think, but I'm not super familiar on the materials and weapon properties, because I've not got to levels where those have come into play too much just yet, so correct me if I'm wrong with that. For his defense, we've gone with the Breastplate. He's got a lot of beard, so it's kind of hard to see exactly what armor he's got on there, but I think Breastplate's certainly the right kind of ballpark for it. Which gives him a standard AC of 17, which is what he has most of the time. And his shield, I've given a Sturdy Shield Lesser, which will increase his AC by 2 with hardness 10, which gives it quite a lot of hit points. Probably an even stronger shield, technically speaking, but it's also a cooking pot made of adamantine. Adamantine is a material, but you can't give it to shields, at least in Path Builder. I imagine you can to like armor and stuff, but shields are a bit different because of how they work. But yeah, that's how we've kind of replicated that set thing for now, for Senshi. So there we go. He's then also got his resistance 1 to fire, speed 20 feet, making him a little bit slower. And his hit points of 23 for first level, which is reasonably hardy, which makes sense because he can take a couple hits, as we see. And yeah, that's level 1 Senshi. So there we go. Early game party is complete. We have all of them now. I will still probably do the previous party members, Shuro and Namari at some point, and I will obviously do, well, that's a spoiler if people aren't that fun to the show, but that other character as well, and maybe others. There's a lot that we could cover. I've seen some discussions online about what class Senshi would be, and like maybe he's a barbarian or he's a ranger, and I don't really see that, especially for Pathfinder 2nd edition anyway. Like, sure, he's got a big axe and he sometimes goes rah, but he's not got any rage really, you know. And ranger, like, sure, I guess because he's like kind of one with nature and all kind of that kind of stuff, but for how they work in Pathfinder, not so much. He doesn't really hunt animals as much, or things like that. So I don't think those work. Fighter's just a very good general basis that you can still do a lot with. That's why fighters in Pathfinder are so great. It's also, again, worth pointing out that Dungeon Meshi, from what I understand, isn't in any way, shape or form based on or around D&D. people gravitate towards that and often will try and compare it to it, but it's not the same. It's not, you know, The Legend of Vox Machina. It is just a fantasy show. So it's not like you can just look at it and point and go, ah, this person is this class, this person is this class. You can to an extent, obviously, and we have. For that, it's very clear with Laios, it's very clear with Marcille, to an extent that she's a magic caster, but even there it's like, well, probably a wizard or something like that, but there's even some debate into that one, and, you know, so on and so forth. But with characters who also just use big melee weapons, that's where you start to get into more complicated territory, because lots of the little abilities and things you see for martial characters, you aren't going to really know. It's just, they have a sword, or they have an axe, well, that makes them a fighter. I think because of his dwarven abilities, and because he's got a big two-handed weapon rather than a shield, most of the time anyway, we've still got a big difference between the two of them. And on the subject of shields, after I finished recording this video, I did some more research into it, and more expensive shields have weapon properties, and some of the most expensive shields, like the indestructible shield, is made of adamantine or adamantium. So that's probably realistically what Senshi's shield would be, but that's a very, very powerful shield for a level 1 character, even though it is, you know, still technically probably what he would have. So just to make sure that I have clarified those items there. Anything else that I've missed or got confused, please let me know. Otherwise, that is the video. Thank you very much for listening and for watching. If you do anything differently, as I say, let me know down below. I'll be interested to see other people's perspectives and ideas. It's always really interesting to learn or see if I've missed anything glaringly obvious like I did with the free run video. And I will see you soon for another one, which will be, like I said, similar but also slightly different. Until then, thanks for being here. Subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Bye.